Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the French residence. It should have been a very happy evening to welcome Elaine, who has been, a friend for at least 25 years. But unfortunately, as you know, terrible events happened in Paris last Friday. And I simply want to say to you personally, but also to all the Americans, how grateful and how moved we have been by the outpouring, I should say, of solidarity and friendship towards my country. Actually, you, the Americans, you are quite compassionate people, and you have shown it again in this unfortunate, horrible attack. So thank you again, thank you very much. But we are here for Elaine, and when you are a diplomat, usually you enjoy observing the natives. It's part of the job to really to discover how weird you are, and weird you are. And but in a sense, really Elaine is there for a sort of tit-for-tat policy. So while I'm, really smiling about the natives in the U.S., she did the same in France. But she does it in the same way that I'm doing it. She does it on the basis of the feeling which is empathy. Trying to understand from within why these strange natives are behaving this odd way. And I think it's quite useful to have, in a sense, an outsider which is trying to understand what is happening in your own home. Because of course, when in France, you are in the house, so you can see the house from outside. You can see how does it look. So it's very useful to have somebody arriving with a totally different eye and pointing out details you have never noticed. And when in this country or in any other country where I've served, I have always loved the details. Suddenly when you are living in a foreign country, you bump into a strange detail. Really something you don't understand. Why? Really. And it's always very interesting to try to go from this detail. And of course, as I'm a good Frenchman, to build an intellectual cathedral, on the flimsiest clue. And I'm very good at it. So, really, I could describe your country, really. But the advantage of Elaine, which is advantage, and of course also a very, very obvious shortcoming, is she's not French. And, so it means that in her books, she has always avoided very carefully to build this sort of intellectual cathedral. She has, in a very honest way, transparent, American way, she has simply set the terms of what she was seeing, what she was feeling, in a sense, to let the reader to decide on his own. And I think that's something which is very, I should say, very courageous, and she has been very effective in doing it. She's also actually using what the French were calling in the 70s, early 70s, you remember these strange days, where everybody was wearing orange and brown, and what we called micro-history. Trying, you are studying, a small event or a small fact, and on this basis of the fact, you try to see what is behind it, what is bigger behind it. She did it with the seduction, the book on the seduction, and now she does it in a sort of very, very particular way, coming from studying a street of Paris, La Rue des Martyrs, really, which is more or less Bobo land, to be frank. But it's still, one of these gentrified period where you still have survivors of the street, and you have the Bobo, the Bohemian bourgeois arriving, really. So which makes in her book, something very, very lively, and in a sense, very revealing. So I'm sure that actually I was told that some of you have already read the book. It's a very nice book. There is one big shortcoming, which is she's much too nice with the French. really much too nice, because very often, in this embassy, in this residence, usually, frankly, I greet Francophiles. And I'm always saying the same thing. First, because I'm aging, so I'm repeating myself. But I'm always saying, but how can you stand the French? We are totally unbearable. So I could go on and on how unbearable we are. So in a sense, I'm very grateful and also full of admiration because Elaine not only has succeeded to stay in French, but apparently she's liking us. And I don't know if I have to give it a sort of profit or saying that if she likes us, there is something which is not very right with her. No, she's great. She has been a great friend for a long, long time. And we are really bumping into each other at every corner of our lives. And now, in a very strange and reverse way, I'm in Washington, D.C., she's in Paris. And she's in Paris, but with her book, actually, she has wrote also Paris to me. La Rue des Martyrs. And as you know, you can see what is the word, all the word, you can see it also studying a microcosm. And she has done it. Reading La Rue des Martyrs, I think you could understand a lot of things about Paris. I know Paris is not France, but also maybe about France. Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you.
I didn't go to one of those fancy finishing schools like Gerard did, and so he can just wing it and just say it all without any notes. But I'm tied to my text because I didn't build these intellectual cathedrals. So I'm going to use a text this evening. My dear Gerard, thank you for our friendship. You and I are different in so many ways, but we forged a relationship based on trust and the determination to speak truth to power some 25 years ago. Thank you, Andy, my partner in life, who flew from Paris to be here this evening, and our daughters, Alessandra and Gabriella, for teaching me that the key to life is the journey and not the destination. And I thank all the Parisians who live and work on the Rue des Martyrs, because they shared their stories and welcomed me into their homes and shops. They gave me lessons about food, wine, history, religion, family, and about gilding wood, sharpening knives, collecting books, even trapping mice. Most of all, just like Gerard has done, they gave me their trust. This evening we are together at the home of France in Washington. It's a time to mourn and to honor the victims of the terror attacks of November 13th. But it is also a time to celebrate a way of life, the French way of life. After the attacks, the terrorists condemned Paris as a capital of abominations and perversions. They could have been talking about the Rue des Martyrs. In the second half of the 19th century, the Brasserie des Martyrs was the go-to place for literary bohemia, including Charles Baudelaire. In the 1890s, the modern striptease was said to have been invented in the Rue des Martyrs. Nearly 60 years ago, Michoud, an 84-year-old showman who dresses in electric blue, created a transvestite cabaret that some of my neighbors insist was the inspiration for La Cage aux Folles. And this man is so respected that President Jacques Chirac decorated him with the Legion of Honor. After the attacks, the terrorists also warned that they will strike again, and that French people would even fear traveling to the market. Well, my Parisian neighbors are resilient. On the morning after the attacks, we greengrocers and the butchers and the cheesemongers on the Rue des Martyrs were open for business. The routine of daily life must go on. If you will allow me, I'd like to read a brief excerpt from my book that captures this spirit of resilience. I wrote it shortly after the terrorist attacks in Paris last January. When terrorists struck Paris in 2015, the neighborhood mourned. Merchants up and down the Rue des Martyrs taped black and white signs with the words, "Je suis Charlie," I am Charlie, to their windows. It had become the universal slogan of solidarity with the satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo, the terrorists' first target. The second target was a Jewish supermarket. Police armed with machine guns were stationed in front of the Rue des Martyrs residence of a part-time Charlie Hebdo columnist who survived the attack. The office of my friend Jean-Michel Rosenfeld was a few doors away. Rosenfeld was a child living in Paris when the Nazis occupied France. He was forced to wear a yellow Star of David that identified him as a Jew. After the terror attacks, he joined a solidarity march of more than 1.5 million people in Paris. Many marchers carried signs saying, "Je suis Charlie." Some marchers proclaimed something different. "Je suis Juif," I am Jewish. Rosenfeld thought back to the grenade and machine gun attack on Chez Joe Goldenberg, a Jewish restaurant on the Rue des Rosiers in the Marais in 1982. He was working for Prime Minister Pierre Mauroy back then and arrived at the scene within 30 minutes. "I am a citizen of France," he told me. I believed it then, and I believe it now. His optimism recalled that of Émile Zola upon attending the wedding of the banker Albert de Rothschild and his cousin Bettina at the Grand Synagogue of Paris, a few blocks from the Rue des Martyrs. The synagogue had recently opened, and the hymns and chants were sung in Hebrew. The couple took their vows before French high society, including politicians, businessmen, aristocrats, diplomats, even royalty. More than 2 decades later, the atmosphere would sour. Zola would risk his future to defend Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish army officer who had been falsely accused and convicted by an anti-Semitic military court of selling secrets to Germany. But on this glorious day, in March 1876, Zola was hopeful. This is what he wrote. "Seeing Paris, filled with wonder and respect, crowding into the synagogue, I thought of one thing, the hatred to which the Jews had been subjected during the Middle Ages. But it must be added that time has marched on, that civilization and justice have gained ground." Zola captured the conviction that France, despite its flaws, has had the capacity over time to change for the better by changing the very concept of what it means to be French and who belongs in France. This issue of belonging is the challenge still facing France today. But I am convinced that the ideals of civilization and justice that Zola observed in 1876 must and will continue to gain ground.
Thank you. Back to champagne pour tout le monde.